Welcome back to Coffee Talk with Mike and Janell. It is our 20th episode, and we are really excited to be back. We had a little bit of a break because COVID struck again. Anywho, APIC's been around for about 7 years, and we're going on our 8th year. Super excited. We've evolved a lot, and there are a few tenets that APIC has sustained itself on. So I wanted to elaborate on those a little bit today, and really one of the major principles we want to highlight is that, when you see a new patient and their family, you always assume competence and intelligence because there's nobody who knows their patient, their child, whomever the best. So, Michael, you want to chat a little bit for me about this?
Yeah, I mean, for folks who work in the world of, intellectual developmental disability, I think a lot of people think in terms of what you said of, we assume intelligence of the folks we treat. They may not have words, they may have some very disruptive behaviors, but it doesn't mean that they're not potentially very intelligent, even if they can't express that intelligence.
Absolutely.
And so when you assume that the nonverbal individual that you're working with is smart, it prevents you from making mistakes and underestimating them and what their motivations may be for various things. Along that line, I mean, we are a mobile program, right? I mean, we go into people's homes and work with families, and we've been in very, very, very impoverished socioeconomic locations, and we've been in some of the most wealthiest regions in the state, and it does not matter.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of it is, you need to go into every clinical interaction assuming that the parents or care providers are also very competent in doing not only their best, but doing what's in the best interest of the individual that they live with. And that's true if it's a family member. It's also true if it's direct care providers in a group home or other things. Sure. It may be expressed in different ways. There may be varying levels of education, maybe, but when you actually take the time and sit down with the people who spend the most time with the individual, day to day, and allow time for them to tell their story, identify where there's challenges, identify where there's strengths, and identify what they think they need to make things better, they're always correct.
Right.
And so often, I don't think healthcare providers are allowed or allow that opportunity of really listening to a family because they're typically 100% accurate with what the needs for an individual are.
Absolutely. And they may not have the clinical terms, and they may not be able to articulate. However, and honestly, in the current system doesn't allow for 2-3 hours to actually sit and get to know the patient.
Well, and they may be really frustrated too, right? I mean, a lot of people, it's a tough system to navigate, as any family member can tell you that, and so they may come in aggressive, they may come in demanding, they may come in. That's not a reflection of them being bad people or difficult people to work with.
They've just felt unheard for so long,
and they know they may only have 10 minutes in this appointment, and
Absolutely.
So they have to get
they
out.
have to be aggressive.
Yeah, so not everyone's practice will allow you to. I mean, Janelle and I sit in people's homes around their dinner table,
as long as it takes,
and we get that not every practice allows that latitude. But if you go into it putting the patient and their care providers first, and their opinion first, and yours second, you always end up in a better place. And we spend a lot of time talking about cultural competence and patient-centered care. When treatment objectives are defined by the individual and the family, and not by the provider, they're always culturally competent because they're defined by the people who know themselves best. So
And it's interesting because typically you go seek out a provider because they're a specialist or an expert in whatever, answers you're seeking. But families and caretakers are truly the experts. We need to take the time to listen.
Yeah.
And I think we really have this unique niche because we not only take the time to do that, we have the luxury of doing that, but we take a holistic approach in looking at these folks. And it's not just medications, and it's not just diagnoses. It's let's look at the environmental factors. Let's look at school. Let's look at their social interactions. Let's look at their medical history. Some of these, most of the kids we treat have all these comorbidities, and that is affecting their daily lives. They're in pain. sometimes they aren't able to express that accurately or at all, and we don't know what's going on. So I think it's really important, and I really appreciate how we take the time to look at the big picture, and then, we talk a lot about removing barriers so we can help our patients maximize their developmental trajectory.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, a lot of people will talk about the word holistic. They'll talk about the biopsychosocial model. That's how we're trained in med school and in social work and other things. But to say it and do it are two separate things. I mean, I'm a psychiatrist by training. Yes, I write medications. And sometimes medications are a very important part of someone's treatment plan. Most of the folks that we treat, if you've watched other episodes, are on too many of the wrong type of medications. But medications are a part. There are any number of times, however, when what the family needs is additional support, alarms for their doors. We had a child who was stuck in a hospital for months on end, which is a very common thing, particularly with the autism population. And he was getting ready to go to a neurobehavioral unit in the country. There's only a handful of them around the entire country. But he was going to have to wait in that hospital to go. The family was willing to take him home, but they needed additional support, and they had a relative who could come up and help them. She lived in Florida, and we're in Buffalo, and could come up, but they didn't have the financial means to get her up. And Janell and I looked at each other and said, "Why don't we just buy them a plane ticket?" Now that may seem weird and extravagant, but then when you think about the hospital that is losing
how much a day?
$2,000 a day with this individual there, and it's not the right treatment location for him. So he was already really struggling, and now getting worse and worse because of being in an inappropriate environment. Suddenly, an open-ended plane ticket is a bargain. And so, our healthcare system doesn't necessarily allow those things to happen as easily as they should. But thinking about that, the other thing that we think about, I would argue, almost more than the patient we're looking at, is how to support the family and the care providers around that patient. Reducing their stress levels. We'll ask people what they think are the 3 or 4 things that would make their situation better. And we actually have to prompt them and say, you can't just talk to us about your child or loved one.
Right.
What things does mom and dad need? What respite do they get? What positive experiences can they have?
What about the siblings? What about the supports? What do you do? How do you unwind? Because if you are burned out, how can you care for your child, your significant other, your loved one?
Yourself,
For sure, for sure.
So it is an important thing, and I would argue those goals are every bit as important as considering someone's aggression scales or how depressed they are, or increasing decreasing meds. And Janell already mentioned, I mean, I think the biggest thing we do is think in terms of, everyone's seen a growth curve. If you've had a child, height and weight growth curves, we kind of envision kind of a developmental growth curve that spans the lifetime. And we look at individuals and say, okay, in a perfect world, with the right services, with the barriers removed, what's the best we could hope for this person? It's a little grandiose thinking that we can estimate what someone's best developmental trajectory is, but we estimate as best we can with the help of family and other people who know them.
The treatment team, yeah.
And then look and say, okay, how far off that curve are they? And what things can we add? They may be services, they may be medications, they may be educational changes. And what things can we remove that are preventing them from being there?
For sure.
And it's really important because people come to us in crisis, and yes, we want to help them with that crisis, and I want you to be better tomorrow. But more importantly, what are you going to be doing in
long term,
month, a year, 10 years? What's the life plan for this individual? What is the family thing about? When you do that longitudinal look, now you can start having conversations about, well, who's going to take care of him or her when they're 54 and maybe the parents can't anymore. It may not be an urgent thing for a family with an 8-year-old, but they're important, difficult concepts to discuss.
It's the big picture and the sticking points. I think that we're really good at helping point out and helping people navigate.
Yeah. So and so we wanted to bring these up because, as you know, we think about different topics, we talk about different topics, but these are some of the things that really are our underlying principles. I think why we're able to connect with families, well, because it's meaningful to them, and to be perfectly honest, you may not be able to change someone's autism. You're not necessarily be able to change behaviors. Some things we can do to improve them, something to do to lessen them. We can certainly help people have more skills and more services.
Right.
But when you support a family and they feel supported, their capacity to go on is that much larger. And so just happy to share some of these thoughts that we've kind of come up with over the last 7+ years.
And we have a ton, but we're not going to belabor these today. We'll probably do a follow-up maybe in 6 months. But
Yeah.
for our 20th, we wanted to do something just kind of about us and a little touchy-feely. And we've been getting a lot of inquiries about our cool mugs. So we are asking you folks to...
Well, if you're
Comment.
interested in a mug, please subscribe to our channel and put a comment in that you did so, and
us.
Yes, and we have what our next trip to New York City is our next travel date.
In about a month.
And so we'll take everyone who's commented that they subscribed and draw a name from a hat and contact you directly, and you too can have your very own coffee talk with Mike and Janell mug. So
how cool is that?
Well, I'm pretty excited about them. So with that, welcome to 2022. Hopefully, it's a better year. And our struggles with COVID hopefully are on the downward trend now, and hopefully they stay in that direction. And with that,
for sure. Till next time, folks.
APIC out.
APIC out.